The cargo ship Morning Star drifted through the empty space between solar systems. Inside the small cockpit, Taemin checked his navigation screen for the third time in an hour. The blue dots on the display showed he was still on course for Earth. 3 more days and he would be home. Tae-min stretched his arms and yawned. He had been flying cargo runs for 8 years now. It was boring work, but it paid well. This trip had been especially long. 6 months hauling mining equipment to the colonies on the edge of human space. The colonists always needed more machines to dig deeper into their new worlds. He opened a food pack and started eating. The protein bars tasted like cardboard, but they kept him fed. Outside his small window, the stars looked the same as always. Tiny points of light in the black. Sometimes Taemin wondered what was out there beyond human space. Were there other people among those distant stars? The scientists on Earth said maybe, but no one had ever found proof. A soft beep came from his control panel. Taemin looked at the screen and frowned. Something was approaching his ship. The radar showed a large object moving very fast toward him. Much larger than any human ship he had ever seen. Tae-min tried to radio the object. Unknown vessel, this is cargo ship Morning Star. Please identify yourself. Only static came back through his speakers. He tried again with the same result. The object was getting closer. Taemin could see it now through his front window. It was huge, maybe 10 times bigger than the largest human warship. The hull was dark green and covered with strange spikes. It looked nothing like any ship humans had ever built. The design was alien and frightening. Warning lights started flashing on Taemin's control panel. His engines were shutting down. The ship's computer was going offline. Everything was failing at the same time. This was not a normal breakdown. Someone was doing this to his ship. What the hell? Taemin muttered. He tried to restart the engines, but nothing worked. The Morning Star was dead in space. The alien ship moved closer until it blocked out the stars completely. A bright blue light surrounded Taemin's ship. He felt strange, like his body was becoming lighter. The walls of his cockpit began to glow with the same blue light. Then everything went white. When Taemin could see again, he was standing in a large metal room. The walls were made of the same dark green material as the alien ship. Strange symbols covered every surface. The air smelled different here, like copper and something else he could not name. 3 creatures stood in front of him. They walked on 2 legs like humans, but that was where the similarity ended. Each one was about 7 feet tall with 4 arms ending in sharp claws. Their heads looked like giant insects with large black eyes and clicking mandibles. Thick armor covered their bodies from head to toe. The creatures spoke to each other in a language that sounded like metal scraping against stone. One of them, larger than the others, stepped forward. When it spoke, Taemin heard words in his own language. You will answer our questions, small creature, the alien said. Its voice was cold and mechanical. Your species is new to us. We must learn about your people before we decide what to do with your worlds. Taemin felt his heart beating fast, but he kept his face calm. I don't know what you want, but taking me against my will is a crime. Release me and my ship immediately. The large alien made a sound that might have been laughter. Crime? You speak of laws to the Valthani Empire? We have conquered 1,000 worlds, little being. Your laws mean nothing to us. The alien gestured with one of its clawed hands. The other 2 creatures grabbed Taemin by his arms and started dragging him toward a door. He did not fight them. Not yet. First, he needed to understand his situation better. They pulled him through corridors filled with more strange symbols and blinking lights. Other aliens walked past them, all looking similar to his captors. Some carried weapons that hummed with energy. Others worked at control panels covered in buttons and screens. The aliens brought Taemin to a small room with no windows. The walls were made of smooth metal, and a single light glowed in the ceiling. They threw him inside and sealed the door behind him. He heard the sound of locks engaging. Tae-min looked around his prison. The room was about 10 feet square with nothing inside except a small bench built into one wall. In the corner was a hole in the floor that was probably meant to be a toilet. The air circulation was poor, making the room feel stuffy and warm. He sat down on the bench and tried to think. These Valthani had technology far beyond anything humans possessed. They could disable his ship from a distance and transport him through solid matter. If they had conquered 1,000 worlds, they were probably telling the truth about their power, but Taemin was not afraid. Fear would not help him now. He needed to be smart and patient. These aliens wanted information about humanity. That meant they were planning something, probably an invasion. He could not let that happen. The door opened and the large alien entered. 2 guards stayed outside in the corridor. The creature looked down at Taemin with its black eyes. "I am Commander Velthic of the Valthani Imperial Fleet," it said. "You will tell me about your homeworld. How many of your kind live there? What WEMs do you possess? How many ships guard your space?" Taemin looked up at the commander. "My name is Taemin. I'm a cargo pilot. I don't know anything about weapons or military matters." Velthic clicked his mandibles together in what seemed like annoyance. "Do not lie to me, human. We detected your ship traveling alone through space. No species sends single vessels into the void without proper defenses unless they are very confident in their power." "I told you the truth," Taemin said. "I haul cargo between colonies." "It's just a job?" The commander stared at him for a long moment. "Your species is unknown to us. In all our conquests, we have never encountered beings quite like you. Your ship's design is primitive, but there are elements we do not understand." "This suggests hidden capabilities." Taemin almost smiled. These aliens thought human cargo ships were secretly advanced warships. They had no idea how wrong they were. Human technology was probably centuries behind theirs. But maybe he could use their misunderstanding to his advantage. "Think what you want," Taemin said. "I'm just a pilot." Velthic leaned closer. "We have ways of extracting information from reluctant prisoners. Mental probes that can read thoughts directly. Neural stimulators that cause exquisite pain. No species has ever resisted us for long. Then I guess we'll see how long I can last." Taemin replied. The commander made that scraping laugh sound again. Brave words from such a small creature. But bravery fades quickly under proper motivation. "Rest while you can, human. Tomorrow we begin your education in the futility of resistance." Velthic left the cell, and the door sealed shut again. Taemin was alone with his thoughts. These Valthani expected him to break under torture. Every other species they had encountered had given up quickly. They thought humans would be the same. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. Taemin had not told them everything about himself. Before becoming a cargo pilot, he had served in the Terran Marines for 6 years. He knew how to resist interrogation. He knew how to endure pain. Most importantly, he knew that every moment he stayed strong was another moment for Earth to prepare. The first human they captured might be the last one they ever took alive. Taemin would make sure of that. Dr. So-Young Kim stared at the computer screen in her laboratory on Earth. The red warning light had been blinking for 3 hours now. Her brother's ship was missing. The Morning Star had sent an automatic distress signal from the outer edge of human space. Then nothing. Complete silence. So-Young had tried to contact Taemin dozens of times, but her messages went unanswered. The ship's tracking beacon had gone dark. So-Young worked as a xenobiologist for the Terran Research Institute. She studied the possibility of alien life in the galaxy. For years, she had hoped to make contact with another intelligent species. Now she feared that contact had already been made, and her brother was the victim. She picked up her communication device and called Director Park at the Terran Defense Council. The old man's face appeared on her screen within seconds. "Director, I need to report a possible first contact situation," So-Young said. "My brother's cargo ship has disappeared under suspicious circumstances." Director Park frowned. "Dr. Kim, cargo ships go missing sometimes. Engine failures, asteroid strikes, navigation errors. Why do you think aliens are involved?" So-Young pulled up the data from Taemin's last transmission. "Look at this sensor reading. Something large approached his ship just before contact was lost. Much larger than any known human vessel. The electromagnetic signature is completely unknown. The director studied the information for several minutes. His expression grew more serious as he read. This is concerning, but we cannot mobilize our forces based on speculation. Sir, if another species has captured a human, we need to respond immediately, So Young said. Every hour we wait makes rescue more difficult. Director Park nodded slowly. I will alert our scout ships in that sector. If your brother's vessel is still there, they will find it. But Dr. Kim, prepare yourself for the possibility that this was simply a tragic accident. The call ended, leaving So Young alone with her fears. She knew Taemin better than anyone. He was careful and experienced. His ship was well maintained. Accidents did not just happen to pilots like her brother. Meanwhile, far from Earth, Taemin lay on the hard bench in his cell. The Valthani had not fed him for 2 days. His mouth was dry and his stomach ached with hunger. But he had endured worse during his military training. The cell door opened, and Commander Velthek entered with 2 guards. The alien commander carried a strange device in one of his clawed hands. It looked like a metal helmet connected to wires and blinking lights. Today your real education begins, human, Velthek said. This neural probe will read your thoughts directly. You cannot lie to a machine that sees inside your mind. Taemin stood up slowly. That thing doesn't look very comfortable. Comfort is not its purpose, the commander replied. Resistance is futile. Every species learns this eventually. The guards grabbed Taemin and forced him to sit back down. Velthek placed the neural probe on his head. The metal felt cold against his skin. Wires snaked down to a control unit that hummed with power. Now, Velthek said, tell me about your homeworld's defenses. Pain shot through Taemin's skull like lightning. The probe was trying to dig into his thoughts, searching for military secrets. He gritted his teeth and focused on other memories. His childhood, his sister's laugh, the taste of his mother's cooking. Anything except what the aliens wanted to know. The pain increased. But Taemin had learned to handle pain during interrogation training. The Marines had taught him techniques to protect classified information. He built mental walls around sensitive memories and hid them behind layers of everyday thoughts. Velthek studied the readings on his control unit. Curious. Your neural patterns are unlike any we have encountered. Most species cannot resist the probe for more than minutes. You have been fighting it for an hour. Taemin said nothing. Speaking would only give the aliens more to work with. He concentrated on breathing slowly and keeping his mind calm. Perhaps your brain structure is different, the commander continued. No matter, we have other methods. The neural probe was removed, but immediately replaced with something worse. Thin needles slid into Taemin's arms and neck. Chemical pain flooded his nervous system. His muscles spasmed and his vision blurred. But still he said nothing about Earth's defenses. Hours passed. The Valthani tried different tortures, each more sophisticated than the last. They used sonic weapons that made his bones ache. They projected horrifying images directly into his brain. They manipulated his body temperature until he shivered uncontrollably. Nothing worked. Taemin endured everything they threw at him. His marine training had prepared him for physical pain, but more importantly, it had taught him why resistance mattered. Every second he stayed silent was another second for humanity to prepare for what was coming. Finally, Velthek called a halt to the session. The commander's mandibles clicked with frustration as he studied his uncooperative prisoner. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species has resisted us this long, Velthek said. What are you, human? What makes your kind so stubborn? Taemin looked up at the alien with tired but defiant eyes. Maybe you've been picking on the wrong species all this time. The commander left the cell with his guards. Alone again, Taemin allowed himself to feel the pain they had inflicted. His body ached everywhere, but his mind was still his own. The Valthani had learned nothing useful from him, but Taemin had learned much about them. He had watched their procedures carefully during the interrogation. Their technology was impressive, but it followed predictable patterns. The guards were disciplined but not particularly alert. The ship's security systems were designed to keep prisoners in, not to stop them from gathering intelligence during the torture session. Taemin had also been listening to the background sounds of the ship. He could hear the rhythm of the engines, the flow of air through ventilation systems, and the footsteps of crew members in nearby corridors. Slowly, he was building a mental map of his prison. The aliens had made a mistake by keeping him alive. They thought they could break any species with enough pain and pressure. They had never encountered humans before. They did not understand that some things were worth suffering for. Back on Earth, Director Park stood in the command center of the Terran Defense Council. 3 scout ships had reached the area where Taemin's vessel had disappeared. So far, they had found nothing except empty space and scattered debris from his cargo ship. "Sir," called Lieutenant Wong from his station, "Scout Ship 3 is reporting something unusual. They're detecting trace energy signatures that don't match any known technology." Director Park moved to Wen's console. "What kind of energy signatures?" "Unknown, sir. The readings suggest a very large vessel was in this area recently. Something much bigger than anything in our fleet." The director felt a chill run down his spine. Dr. Kim had been right. Her brother had encountered something alien. The question now was whether Taemin was still alive, and if so, how long humanity had before these aliens came for Earth. "Alert all fleet commanders," Director Park ordered. "We may have a first contact situation on our hands. And based on the evidence, it may not be friendly contact." Across the galaxy, Taemin sat in his cell and planned. The Valthani thought they had captured a simple cargo pilot. They had no idea they were holding a former Marine who knew how to fight, how to resist, and most importantly, how to escape. Tomorrow they would try to break him again. But with each failed attempt, Taemin was learning more about his captors. Soon, he would know enough to turn the tables on them. The first human they had captured was about to become their worst nightmare. Captain Jin-Woo Park stood on the bridge of the Terran scout ship Defiance. His crew had been searching for the missing cargo vessel for 3 days now. The debris field they found told a clear story. Something had destroyed the Morning Star, with weapons far beyond human technology. "Captain," called Ensign Lee from the sensor station, "I'm picking up a faint energy trail leading away from the debris field. It's very old, but still detectable." Jinwoo moved to look at the readings. He had been a military pilot for 15 years and had never seen anything like these energy patterns. "Can you determine the source?" "Unknown technology, sir. The signature suggests something massive, at least 10 times larger than our biggest warships." The captain made his decision quickly. "Set course to follow that trail. Maximum stealth protocols. If we're dealing with hostile aliens, we need to find them before they find Earth." The Defiance changed course and began following the strange energy signature deeper into unexplored space. Jinwoo hoped they would find answers. More importantly, he hoped they would find the missing pilot alive. Meanwhile, aboard the Valthani ship, Taemin had been working on his escape plan for 5 days. The aliens thought their cell was escape-proof, but they had not considered human creativity. During his Marine service, Taemin had specialized in demolitions and electronics. The skills that helped him repair cargo ships were now helping him understand alien technology. The cell's locking mechanism used magnetic fields to seal the door. Taemin had discovered this by carefully observing the guards when they entered. The control panel outside his cell glowed with different colors when the locks engaged and disengaged. Blue meant locked, green meant unlocked. He had also noticed that the ventilation system carried more than just air. Electrical conduits ran through the walls, and some of them passed close to his cell. If he could access those conduits, he might be able to disrupt the locking system. The problem was getting to the conduits without alerting the guards. The cell was monitored by cameras, but Taemin had identified their blind spots. There was a small area near the back corner where the cameras could not see clearly. Using a piece of metal from his belt buckle, Taemin had been slowly scraping away at the wall panel in that corner. The work was slow and quiet. After days of careful effort, he had managed to create a small hole just big enough for his hand. On the 6th day of his captivity, Commander Velthik visited his cell again. The alien commander looked frustrated and angry. His previous interrogation methods had failed completely. "Your resistance is becoming tedious, human," Velthik said. "Perhaps it is time for more direct measures." "I told you before," Taemin replied. "I don't know anything about military matters. I'm just a cargo pilot." "Lies!" the commander hissed. "No simple pilot could resist our neural probes. Your mind has been trained for resistance. This suggests military conditioning." Tae-Min shrugged. "Think what you want." Velthek clicked his mandibles in annoyance. "Very well, since you refuse to cooperate, we will demonstrate what happens to those who defy the Valthani Empire." The commander gestured to his guards. They grabbed Taemin and dragged him from his cell. This time, they took him to a different room. This one was larger and filled with strange equipment. Other aliens worked at control stations around the walls. In the center of the room was a chair made of metal and wires. Restraints covered the arms and legs. The entire device hummed with electrical power. Taemin recognized it immediately as a torture chair designed to cause maximum pain. "This is an enhanced interrogation device," Velthik explained. "It stimulates every pain receptor in your nervous system simultaneously. Most subjects lose consciousness within minutes. Those who remain awake usually die from shock." The guards strapped Taemin into the chair. Metal contacts pressed against his skin at dozens of points. Wires connected to a control panel operated by a Valthani technician. "Last chance, human," Velthik said. "Tell us about your homeworld's defenses, and this ends quickly." Taemin looked directly at the commander. "Go to hell." Velthik nodded to the technician. Pain exploded through Taemin's body like fire in his veins. Every nerve screamed at once. His muscles locked in spasms. His vision went white, but he did not scream. He had learned techniques during his military training to handle extreme pain. He separated his mind from his body, focusing on memories of home, his sister's smile, the blue sky of Earth, the sound of rain on his apartment window. The torture continued for what felt like hours. The Valthani increased the power levels repeatedly, expecting him to break. Other aliens gathered to watch this unusual display. They had never seen a species endure such treatment without begging for mercy. Finally, Velthik ordered the torture to stop. Taemin slumped in the chair, his body shaking from the aftereffects, but his eyes were still alert and defiant. "Impossible," muttered the technician. "The power levels should have killed him twice over." "Yet he lives," Velthik observed, "and he has revealed nothing." The commander leaned close to Taemin's face. "What are you, human? What kind of species produces such stubborn individuals?" Taemin managed a weak smile, the kind you should have left alone. Back in his cell later, Taemin waited for the guards to leave. His body ached terribly from the torture, but his mind was clear. The interrogation had actually helped him in one important way. While being dragged through the ship's corridors, he had seen more of the vessel's layout. The Valthani ship was huge, with multiple levels and hundreds of crew members. But it followed a logical design pattern. The prisoner cells were on the lower levels, near the engine room. The command center was higher up, closer to the ship's weapons and navigation systems. Most importantly, Taemin had observed the guard rotations. The aliens changed shifts every 8 hours, and there was always a brief moment when the corridors were less watched. If he could escape his cell during one of those moments, he might be able to move freely for a time. That night, when the ship was quiet, Taemin went to work. He reached through the hole he had made in the wall and felt around for electrical wires. His fingers found a bundle of cables that felt warm to the touch. Power conduits. Using his belt buckle as a tool, he carefully stripped the insulation from one of the wires. Then he touched it to another wire, creating a short circuit. Sparks flew, and the lights in his cell flickered. More importantly, the magnetic locks on his door disengaged for several seconds before the ship's automatic systems restored power. It was not enough time to escape, but it proved his theory was correct. he could disrupt the locking mechanism. Tay-Min spent the rest of the night planning his next move. The Valthani thought they had broken every species they encountered through pain and fear. They measured strength only in terms of physical power and advanced weapons. They did not understand that humans had a different kind of strength, the strength to endure suffering for a greater cause, the strength to keep fighting even when victory seemed impossible, the strength to turn their captor's own technology against them. Tomorrow the aliens would try to break him again. But Taemin was no longer just surviving their interrogations. He was learning, planning, and preparing to strike back. The first human they had captured was about to show them what a real predator looked like. The hunt was about to begin, and this time the Valthani would be the prey. Engineer Hyun-Soo Kim worked at his station aboard the Defiance as the ship followed the alien energy trail deeper into space. His instruments showed they were getting closer to something big. The energy readings were getting stronger every hour. "Captain," Hyun-Soo called out, "the trail is leading us toward an asteroid field. Whatever we're following stopped there." Captain Jinwoo studied the tactical display. The asteroid field would provide good cover for a large ship trying to hide. It would also make their approach more dangerous. "Take us in slowly," Jinwoo ordered. "Passive sensors only. If there are hostile aliens in there, I don't want them to know we're coming." The Defiance moved carefully between the floating rocks. Hyun-Soo monitored his equipment closely, watching for any sign of the alien vessel. After 2 hours of searching, his sensors detected something massive hiding behind a large asteroid. "Contact," he whispered. "Bearing 270. Distance approximately 50 kilometers. It's huge, Captain. At least 3 times the size of our largest battleships." Jinwoo moved to look at the sensor readings. The alien ship was unlike anything in human databases. Its design was organic-looking with curved surfaces and spike-like protrusions. It appeared to be powered down, drifting silently among the asteroids. "Are there any life signs?" the captain asked. Hyun-Soo adjusted his sensors. "Difficult to tell through their hull, but yes. I'm detecting what appears to be several hundred life forms aboard that vessel." Jinwoo made his decision. "We're going to get closer. If the missing pilot is on that ship, we need to find him." Meanwhile, inside the alien vessel, Taemin was putting his escape plan into action. The guard rotation had just changed, leaving a brief window of opportunity. He reached through the hole in his cell wall and found the power conduits he had located earlier. This time, instead of just creating a short circuit, Taemin had prepared a more sophisticated sabotage. Using metal strips torn from his clothing, he had created a crude but effective electrical bridge. When he connected it to the right wires, it would cause a cascading power failure in this section of the ship. Tae-Min took a deep breath and made the connection. Sparks flew from the wall, and the lights in his cell went out completely. Emergency lighting came on a few seconds later, bathing everything in red light. More importantly, he heard the magnetic locks on his door disengage with a soft click. He pushed the door open carefully and looked into the corridor. It was empty, just as he had hoped. The power failure had affected this entire deck, and the guards were probably dealing with the emergency systems. Elsewhere, Tae-Min moved quickly but quietly down the corridor. His bare feet made no sound on the metal floor. He had memorized the ship's layout during his trips to the interrogation room, and he knew exactly where he needed to go. His first target was the ship's communication array. If he could access their systems, he might be able to send a message to Earth warning them about the Valthani threat. The communication center was 3 decks up, near the ship's command bridge. Tae-Min found an access shaft and climbed carefully upward. The Valthani had not designed their ship with human prisoners in mind. The shafts were large enough for their insectoid bodies, which meant they were also large enough for a human to crawl through. As he climbed, Taemin could hear the aliens moving through the corridors below. They were searching for the cause of the power failure. Their clicking, scraping language echoed through the ventilation system. They sounded angry and confused. After 20 minutes of careful climbing, Taemin reached the deck that housed the communication center. He found another access panel and peered out into the corridor. Two Valthani guards stood outside the communication room, but they were facing away from his hiding spot. Tay-Min knew he had to act fast. The guards would discover his escape soon enough. He needed to get into that communication room and send his warning before they found him. He waited until both guards were distracted by a conversation, then slipped out of the access shaft. Moving like a shadow, he approached the communication room from behind. The door was sealed, but Tay-Min had learned enough about Valthani technology to understand their basic security systems. Using the same technique that had freed him from his cell, Tay-Min found the door's power coupling and created another short circuit. The door slid open with a soft hiss. He darted inside and sealed it behind him. The communication center was filled with alien equipment, but the basic principles were similar to human technology. Transmitters, receivers, and control panels. Tay-Min studied the displays, trying to understand how to operate the system. After several minutes of experimentation, he managed to activate what appeared to be a long-range transmitter. The device hummed to life and symbols appeared on the display screens. Tay-Min began recording a message in human language, hoping that Earth's monitoring stations would detect it. "This is Tay-Min Kim, pilot of the cargo ship Morning Star." He spoke into what he hoped was a microphone. "I have been captured by a hostile alien species called the Valthani. They are planning to invade human space. Their technology is far superior to ours. Earth must prepare for attack immediately." Before he could say more, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. The aliens had discovered his escape. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridors as search teams spread out to find him. Tay-Min quickly transmitted his message and shut down the communication system. He needed to find a new hiding place before the guards reached this room. The ventilation shafts were his best option, but he had to reach them before the aliens surrounded the communication center. He moved to the access panel he had used to enter the room, but voices in the corridor told him it was already too late. The guards were right outside. Tay-Min looked around desperately for another way out. In the far corner of the room, he spotted another access shaft. This one was smaller and looked like it might lead to the ship's engine room. Without hesitation, Tay-Min squeezed inside. Just as the communication room door exploded inward, Commander Velthak stormed into the room with 6 guards. His mandibles clicked furiously as he examined the disturbed equipment. "The human was here," he hissed. "He accessed our communication systems." "What did he transmit?" A technician worked quickly at the control panels. "Unknown, Commander. The message was sent on a frequency we do not recognize. It was directed toward the area of space where we found his vessel." Velthak's black eyes gleamed with anger. "He warned his people. This changes everything. We can no longer study them quietly. They know we exist." "Should we eliminate the prisoner?" asked Sub-Commander Krythex. "No," Velthak replied. "He is too valuable now. This human has demonstrated capabilities we did not expect. We must learn how he escaped and what other surprises his species might have in store." The commander turned to his guards. "Find him, search every deck, every room, every access shaft. But bring him back alive, and double the security on all critical systems. This human has proven more resourceful than any species we have encountered." As the search teams spread throughout the ship, Tay-Min crawled through the narrow access shaft toward the engine room. His message had been sent, but he was not finished yet. The Valthani had underestimated humans once. He intended to make sure they regretted that mistake. The ship's engines were the source of all its power. If he could sabotage them properly, he might be able to disable the entire vessel. The Valthani thought they were dealing with a primitive species that would surrender at the first sign of superior technology. They were about to learn that humans fought hardest when the odds were against them. Communications Officer Miran Lee sat at her station aboard the Defiance, monitoring all frequencies for any sign of the missing pilot. The alien ship they had found was still drifting silently among the asteroids. Captain Jinwoo had ordered them to maintain distance while they studied the massive vessel. Suddenly, Miran's equipment came alive with activity. A transmission was coming from the alien ship on an old Earth military frequency. She quickly isolated the signal and enhanced. Captain, she called out excitedly. I'm receiving a transmission from the alien vessel. It's in human language. Jinwoo rushed to her station. Put it on speakers. The bridge fell silent as Taemin's voice filled the air. This is Taemin Kim, pilot of the cargo ship Morning Star. I have been captured by a hostile alien species called the Vulfani. They are planning to invade human space. Their technology is far superior to ours. Earth must prepare for attack immediately. The message repeated several times before cutting. Oof. Jinwoo felt a mixture of relief and dread. The missing pilot was alive, but his warning painted a terrifying picture of humanity's future. Run, send that message to Earth immediately, Jinwoo ordered. Full priority transmission to the defense. Council, then prepare our weapon systems. If that man is still alive on that ship, we're going to get him out. Meanwhile, deep inside the Vulfani vessel, Taemin had reached the engine room. The space was enormous, filled with machinery that hummed with power. Strange crystals glowed with blue energy, feeding power to systems throughout the ship. The technology was beautiful and alien, but Taemin could see the basic principles at work. All starships, whether human or alien, needed power distribution systems. If he could disrupt the flow of energy from the main generators, he could cripple the entire vessel. The problem was doing it without killing himself in the process. Tae-Min studied the engine layout carefully. The power crystals were contained in shielded chambers, probably to protect the crew from radiation. Heavy cables carried energy from the crystals to junction boxes throughout the room. If he could overload one of those junction boxes, it might cause a cascade failure. He found a maintenance panel near one of the larger junction boxes. Using techniques he had learned as both a marine and a cargo pilot, Taemin began rewiring the connections. He crossed positive and negative feeds, creating feedback loops that would build up dangerous power levels. As he worked, he could hear the sound of Vulfani search teams moving through the ship above him. Their clicking voices echoed through the ventilation system. They were getting closer, but Taemin needed just a few more minutes to complete his sabotage. Commander Velthak stood in the ship's command center, watching status reports from his search teams. The human had vanished like smoke, moving through areas that should have been impossible to access. No other species had ever demonstrated such cunning and adaptability. Commander, called the ship's chief engineer, we are detecting power fluctuations in the main engine room. Something is interfering with our primary systems. Velthak's mandibles clicked with understanding. The human, he is not just hiding, he is sabotaging our ship. The commander turned to his tactical officer. How long until our weapon systems come online? Approximately 10 minutes, Commander. We are still running on minimal power. And our engines? Also offline for maintenance. We cannot move until the power grid is restored. Velthak realized with growing alarm that the human had chosen his targets perfectly. The ship was effectively helpless until they could stop his sabotage efforts. Back in the engine room, Taemin put the finishing touches on his electrical trap. When the junction box tried to distribute power to the ship's systems, it would instead create a massive overload. The explosion would damage critical components and leave the Vulfani ship dead in space. But as he prepared to activate his sabotage, Taemin heard footsteps on the metal stairs leading down to the engine room. The search teams had found him at last. 6 Vulfani warriors descended into the engine chamber, their weapons drawn. They moved carefully, knowing that their quarry was dangerous despite being unarmed. Behind them came Commander Velthak himself. Step away from that control panel, human, Velthak commanded. You have caused enough damage? Taemin stood slowly, his hand still near the activation switch for his sabotage device. Actually, I'm just getting started. Your escape was impressive, the commander admitted, but it ends here. Surrender now, and we will make your death quick. You know, Taemin said conversationally, for a species that has conquered 1,000 worlds, you really don't understand humans very well. Enlighten me, Velthak replied, curious despite the situation. We don't surrender when things get tough, Taemin explained. "We get tougher." With that, he slammed his hand down on the activation switch. The junction box erupted in a shower of sparks and flame. Emergency alarms began blaring throughout the ship as power systems failed in sequence. The lights went out, leaving only the eerie glow of the power crystals to illuminate the engine room. In the darkness, Taemin rolled behind a large piece of machinery as the Valthani opened fire. Energy beams lit up the engine room like lightning, but their shots went wild in the confusion, striking equipment instead of their target. "Stop firing!" Velthik shouted. "You will damage the power crystals." The shooting ceased, giving Taemin a chance to move to a better position. The engine room was large and filled with machinery that provided good cover. He could play hide and seek with his captors for quite a while, but he would not have to. His sabotage had done more than just disable the ship's systems. It had also sent a signal that other humans would recognize outside the alien vessel. Captain Jinwoo watched as the massive ship suddenly went dark. Emergency lights flickered on briefly, then died again. The alien vessel was clearly in distress. "That's our cue," Jinwoo announced to his crew. "Dong Hyen, prepare the boarding shuttles. Miran, jam their communications. Hyen-Su, scan for the pilot's location." "Captain," Hyen-Su reported, "I'm detecting human life signs in the lower sections of the ship. Engine room area." "Perfect. Dong Hyen, take your team straight there. Our pilot has given us the perfect opportunity." Pilot Dong Hyen Park had been waiting for this moment. He was one of the best shuttle pilots in the fleet, and he had volunteered for the most dangerous part of the rescue mission. Getting aboard an alien ship in the middle of a battle would test all his skills. "Boarding shuttle launching now," Dong Hyen reported as his small craft separated from the Defiance. "ETA to target, 3 minutes." Back in the engine room, the game of cat and mouse continued. Taemin used his knowledge of the ship's layout to stay ahead of the search teams. Every few minutes he would sabotage another system, causing more chaos and confusion. Commander Velthik was beginning to understand the true nature of his opponent. This was not just a stubborn prisoner refusing to cooperate. This was a warrior conducting a one-man campaign against his entire ship. "Commander," one of his officers reported over the communication system, "we are detecting an approaching human vessel, small craft, moving fast toward our hull." Velthik's eyes widened in realization. The human sabotage had not been random destruction. It had been a signal to his rescuers, telling them exactly when to attack. The first human they had captured was not just resisting their interrogation. He was leading a counterattack against the mighty Valthani Empire. Pilot Dong Hyen Park guided his boarding shuttle through the asteroid field toward the disabled Valthani ship. Behind him sat 12 of the best Marines from the Defiance. Their faces were grim but determined. They all knew this rescue mission could easily become a suicide run. 30 seconds to contact," Dong Hyen announced over the shuttle's communication system. "Remember, our pilot is somewhere in the engine room. Get in, get him, get out." The shuttle touched down on the alien ship's hull with a soft thud. Immediately, the Marines began cutting through the metal plating with plasma torches. The Valthani had built their ship to keep things out, but human technology was very good at breaking through barriers. Inside the Valthani vessel, Taemin heard the sound of cutting tools above his head. He smiled grimly as he crouched behind a power conduit. His message had gotten through, and now his fellow humans were coming to get him. Commander Velthik also heard the cutting sounds. He realized his ship was being boarded by human forces. This was a disaster beyond imagination. No species had ever dared to board a Valthani warship. The very idea was unthinkable. "All security teams to the upper decks," Velthik commanded. Through his communication device, repel the human boarders. Use maximum force. But most of his security teams were trapped in elevators that no longer worked due to Taemin's sabotage. The few teams that could move were scattered throughout the ship, searching for the escaped prisoner. The humans had chosen their timing perfectly. The Marines finished cutting through the hull and dropped into the Valthani ship. Sergeant Kim led the team as they moved quickly through alien corridors. Their weapons were ready and their movements were smooth and professional. "Strange air in here," whispered Corporal Jang. "Smells like copper and something else. Stay focused," Sergeant Kim replied. "Our man is 3 decks down. We need to reach him before the aliens reorganize their defenses." The Marines encountered their first Valthani guards near a junction in the corridor. The aliens were tall and intimidating with their 4 arms and insect-like heads. But they were not prepared for human military tactics. The Marines used coordinated fire and movement to overwhelm the surprised guards. Their weapons cut through Valthani armor like it was paper. Within seconds, the alien guards were down, and the humans were moving again. In the engine room, Taemin heard the sound of gunfire echoing through the ship's corridors. His rescuers were fighting their way toward him, but they would need help. To get through all the Valthani security forces, Taemin looked around the engine room and spotted something useful. The power crystals that ran the ship were connected to a manual override system. If he could access that system, he might be able to restore power to certain sections of the ship while keeping others dark. Moving carefully to avoid the Valthani soldiers still searching for him, Taemin reached the override panel. The alien writing was impossible to read, but the controls were arranged logically. After a few minutes of experimentation, he managed to restore power to the elevators and corridor lighting on the upper decks. This had 2 effects. First, it allowed the Marines to see where they were going and move faster through the ship. Second, it forced the scattered Valthani security teams to respond to multiple areas at once. Dividing their attention, Commander Velthik watched his tactical displays in growing alarm. The human boarders were moving through his ship like they owned it. They seemed to know exactly where they were going and how to avoid his strongest defensive positions. "How are they navigating our ship so easily?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "Unknown, Commander. It is as if they have detailed knowledge of our layout." Velthik's mandibles clicked as understanding dawned. "The prisoner. He has been studying our ship during his escape attempts. He is guiding his rescuers." The commander made a difficult decision. "Abandon the upper decks. Concentrate all remaining forces in the engine room. We will make our stand there." Sergeant Kim and his Marines reached the entrance to the engine room just as Valthani reinforcements arrived from the other direction. The corridor erupted in weapon fire as both sides took cover behind bulkheads and support beams. "Taemin," Sergeant Kim called out. "If you can hear me, we're here to get you out." From his hiding place behind the power conduits, Taemin shouted, "Back! I'm in the engine room. But there are about 20 aliens between us. Can you get to a safer position?" The sergeant asked. Tae-Min looked around the massive engine room. The Valthani forces were spread throughout the space, using the machinery for cover just like he was. But he had spent days learning the layout of this room. He knew every pipe, every conduit, every access panel. "Give me 2 minutes," Taemin called back. "Then watch for my signal." Taemin moved carefully through the engine room, staying low and using the machinery to block line of sight with the alien soldiers. He reached another power control panel, this one connected to the ship's artificial gravity system. His finger hovered over the controls. What he was about to do would affect everyone in the room, including himself. But it would also give the Marines the advantage they needed. Tae-Min pressed the gravity control. Immediately, the artificial gravity in the engine room cut out completely. Aliens and equipment began floating in zero gravity, but the Valthani were not prepared for this change. The Marines, however, had trained extensively in zero-gravity combat. They used their magnetic boots and maneuvering thrusters to stay oriented while the confused aliens drifted helplessly through the air. "Now!" Sergeant Kim shouted to his team. The Marines pushed into the engine room, their weapons finding targets among the floating Valthani soldiers. The aliens tried to return fire, but they could not aim properly while spinning through the air. Within minutes, the engine room was secure. The surviving Valthani soldiers surrendered rather than continue fighting in the impossible conditions. Tae-Min activated his magnetic boots and walked over to the Marines. He was thin and showed signs of his captivity, but his eyes were bright and alert. About time you showed up, he said with a tired smile. Sorry we're late, Sergeant Kim replied. We had trouble finding the place. Commander Velthic floated near the ceiling of the engine room, held in place by two Marines. His black eyes stared at Taemin with something that might have been respect. You have taught us much about your species, human, Velthic said. Perhaps. We underestimated the threat you represent. Taemin looked up at the alien commander. This wasn't a threat. This was a warning. If your people want peace with humanity, you can have it. But if you want war, you'll get more than you bargained. FOR. Dr. Yujin, the diplomatic attach from the Defiance, had accompanied the rescue team. She stepped forward and addressed Velthic directly. The Terran government is prepared to open negotiations with your empire, she said formally. But those negotiations will be between equals, not between conquerors and conquered. Velthic floated silently for a long moment, considering his options. His mighty warship had been disabled by a single human prisoner. His elite soldiers had been defeated by a small boarding party. Everything he had believed about Valthani's superiority was now in question. What terms do you propose? He asked finally. Simple, Dr. Yujin replied. Your empire agrees to leave human space alone. In return, we will not share your location with our military forces. You can return home and report that humans are not suitable for conquest. Commander Velthic realized. He had no choice. His ship was crippled, his crew was defeated, and these humans held all the advantages. The first human his empire had captured had indeed been the last one they should ever have taken. The age of Valthani expansion was about to end, and it was ending because they had picked a fight with the wrong species. 3 months after the rescue, Commander Velthic stood before the High Council of the Valthani Empire on their homeworld. The massive chamber was filled with the Empire's most powerful leaders. Their black eyes stared at him with cold disapproval. Supreme Overlord Zektal spoke first. His voice echoed through the chamber like grinding metal. You return to us with tales of defeat, Commander? You claim that a single primitive species disabled your warship and humiliated our forces. Velthic kept his voice steady despite his fear. Supreme Overlord, the humans are not primitive. Their technology may appear simple, but they possess capabilities we do not understand. They fight with a determination that defies logic. Nonsense, hissed General Morthic from his position on the council. No species has ever resisted our conquest. Your failure is a result of poor leadership, nothing more. With respect, General. You were not there, Velthic replied. The human prisoner endured torture that would have killed most beings. He escaped from our most secure cell. He sabotaged our ship while being hunted by our best soldiers. Then his people mounted a rescue that succeeded despite impossible odds. Supreme Overlord Zektal leaned forward on his throne. You speak as if you admire these creatures. I respect them, Velthic said honestly. And I fear what will happen. If we attack their homeworld. The council erupted in angry clicking and scraping sounds. The idea that the mighty Valthani Empire should fear any species was unthinkable to them. They had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years through superior technology and ruthless efficiency. General Morthic stood up, his forearms spread wide. This cowardice will not be tolerated. I will lead the invasion fleet myself. We will show these humans what true power looks like. You will all die, Velthic said quietly. The chamber fell silent. Speaking such words to the High Council was tantamount to treason. But Velthic had seen what humans could do when pushed to their limits. Supreme Overlord Zektal's voice was deadly calm. Explain yourself, Commander. The humans have had 3 months to prepare since our encounter, Velthic said. They know we exist. They know our capabilities. They will be ready for us. Ready with what? General Morthic scoffed. Their pathetic weapons? Their tiny ships? Ready with something we have never faced before, Velthic replied. A species that refuses to surrender. Every human we capture will resist like the first one did. Every human we kill will be replaced by 10 more seeking revenge. They do not fight for conquest or glory. They fight for survival, and that makes them infinitely more dangerous than any enemy we have faced. But the High Council would not listen to his warnings. They had grown too comfortable in their power, too certain of their superiority. Within hours of the meeting, they had authorized a massive invasion fleet to attack Earth. General Morthic took command of 300 warships, the largest fleet the Valthani Empire had ever assembled. They departed for human space with confidence that this campaign would be over quickly, back on Earth. Admiral Sung-Ho Kim stood in the command center of the Terran Defense Council. The walls were covered with tactical displays showing the deployment of human forces throughout the solar system. Every ship, every weapons platform, every orbital defense station was ready for battle. The warning from Taemin had given humanity precious time to prepare. Earth's shipyards had worked around the clock to build new warships. The colonies had been evacuated or fortified. Most importantly, human engineers had studied the captured Valthani technology and found ways to counter it. "Admiral," called Commander Park from his station. "Long-range sensors are detecting incoming vessels. Multiple contacts bearing directly for Earth." Admiral Sung-Ho studied the tactical display. The approaching fleet was massive, just as intelligence reports had predicted. But he was not afraid. Humanity had faced extinction before and survived. They would do so again. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "This is what we trained for. Show them why they should have left us alone." The battle began at the edge of the solar system. The Valthani fleet expected to sweep aside human defenses with their superior technology. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that had learned from their previous encounter. Human ships used hit-and-run tactics, striking fast and disappearing before the aliens could respond effectively. They targeted the Valthani ship's power systems, using the knowledge gained from Taemin's sabotage of Velthic's vessel. Most surprisingly, the humans showed a level of coordination and tactical thinking that the Valthani had never encountered. Every human ship seemed to know exactly where it needed to be and when. They fought not as individual vessels but as a unified force with a single purpose. General Morthic watched in growing alarm as his supposedly superior fleet was torn apart by human tactics. Ships that should have been easy prey were destroying his best warships. The primitive weapons that his intelligence reports had dismissed were cutting through Valthani armor like it was paper. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "Unknown, General. The humans appear to have developed countermeasures to all our standard weapons and defenses." On Earth, Timon sat in the command center alongside Admiral Sung-Ho. His knowledge of Valthani technology and tactics had been invaluable in planning the defense. But more than that, his resistance during captivity had become a symbol of human determination. "The fleet is breaking formation," reported Commander Park. "Several enemy vessels are attempting to retreat." "Let them go," Admiral Sung-Ho ordered. "We want survivors to carry word back to their empire." The battle that became known as the Last Harvest lasted 18 hours. When it ended, 2/3 of the Valthani invasion fleet had been destroyed. The survivors limped back toward their home space, carrying with them the knowledge that the age of easy conquest was over. General Morthic was among the dead, his flagship destroyed in the final assault on Earth's orbital defenses. The few remaining Valthani commanders could barely believe what had happened. They had brought the Empire's mightiest fleet to crush a single world, and that world had crushed them instead. News of the defeat spread quickly through Valthani. Space, client species that had served the Empire for centuries, began to rebel. If humans could defeat the mighty Valthani fleet, perhaps freedom was possible after all. Within a year, the Valthani Empire had collapsed. Without their aura of invincibility, they could not maintain control over 1,000 conquered worlds. Species after species declared independence and drove out their former masters. Commander Velthek, now serving as the temporary leader of what remained of his people, sent a message to Earth. The Valthani formally surrendered and requested negotiations for a peace treaty. The talks were held on a neutral space station. Velthek faced the human delegation with what could only be described As humility, Dr. Yujin led the human team, with Taemin serving as an advisor. "We accept your surrender," Dr. Yujin said formally. "But peace between our peoples will require more than just an end to hostilities." "What do you require?" Velthik asked. "Help us find the species your empire enslaved," Taemin said. "Help? U.S. give them their freedom. Prove that the Valthani can change." Velthik looked at the human who had single-handedly started the downfall of his empire. "It will be done, perhaps. Perhaps this defeat will teach my people what we should have learned long ago. That true strength comes not from conquering others, but from building something worth protecting." Years later, Taemin returned to his job as a cargo pilot. But now he flew missions to worlds liberated from Valthani rule, carrying supplies and hope to species learning to be free again. The galaxy was a different place now. Humanity had not sought to replace the Valthani Empire with their own. Instead, they had become protectors of freedom, helping other species defend themselves against would-be conquerors. Sometimes, on quiet nights between the stars, Taemin would think about his time in that alien cell. His resistance had seemed so small then, so hopeless. But it had started something larger than himself. It had shown the galaxy that no empire, no matter how powerful, could truly conquer the spirit of those who refused to surrender. The first human the Valthani captured had indeed been the last one they ever should have witnessed. But more than that, he had been the beginning of something new. Something better. Something free.